All right, guys, welcome back to this episode 60 of the Raw Knowledge Podcast. You already know, training, nutrition, lifestyle, keeping it real. And I'm with my guest today, Sonny Webster. Sonny, thanks for joining me, mate. How's it all going?
No problem at all. Thank you for having me. Did you say 60 episodes?
Yeah, episode 60.
It's a lot of chatting, that, mate.
Mate, I tell you, I can talk a glass eye to sleep.
Good. Who's been your favourite?
What was that?
Can I put who's been your favourite chat so far?
Shit, man, that is. Do you know what? I won't go with someone obvious. It was probably Kate. Slovenia has been one of my favorites because, and I'll tell you why, her perspective on life is absolutely out of this world. Like, if I ask you a question or someone asks you a question, you think, cool, I can see that point of view, I can see that point of view, I can see that point of view. Now, she comes at it from a point of view that you wouldn't even expect, but it's brilliant. And you're like, shit, there's more than a few ways to skin a cat.
Awesome. Love that. It always is the ones you don't expect. And I think, a lot of the time you're going into podcasts, like when people probably start listening to this, they'll go, okay, Sonny, we're going to talk about weightlifting here. And for me, whenever I'm podcasting, it's always nice to talk about the stuff that people necessarily don't expect or they don't already know.
Exactly. And as we talked about off air, that's kind of what I want to do. And I think my listeners know that, again, it's about raw knowledge. It's like, let's not talk about the obvious. That we know like what you do, but any intelligent person knows it's not what you do, it's why you do it, right? And also, who is Sonny Webster? So let's start with, for people who don't know, shame on them, terrible. But give us like a bit of a streamlined synopsis just to bring people up to date. Like if it was a trailer for a movie, just be like, this is what you've missed. And then we'll get on the same page and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so, well, guys, I'm 26 years old. I grew up in a little town called Ivy Bridge in Devon, where I started school. And as a kid, I was a really keen golfer. And I played a lot of golf, and that was the main sport my dad got me into. Now, I moved to a completely new school down in Devon, and I stumbled across the sport of Olympic weightlifting. And back when I started it 14 yeyears ago now, so when I was 12 years old, it was nowhere near as popular as it is now, thanks to CrossFit. And since that time, since I started 12 years ago, I've created a life and a business around the beautiful barbell. And I competed for Great Britain in the 2016 Olympic Games, 2014 Commonwealth Games for England. And since then, I've moved out to Australia after touring the world, delivering seminars, teaching people about the sport of Olympic weightlifting and sharing my passion for the sport, really. I guess in the quickest overview you could have. And here we are.
No, that's good, mate. That's good. And we'll keep it brief because like we said, there's lots of, and I'll put all the links into the description as people know. So if you're listening, guys, you can click through, but obviously listen first to, your academies and perhaps other podcasts that you've done if people want to sort of explore, and I'm sure they will jump on the social links, etc. So I guess we will start with something that is obvious because I do want to talk about this a little bit. And I think it's like the misconceptions of Olympic lifting. Like, for example, I'm someone who's a fan of the big three, but I'm not tied to it. When people generally ask you, they go, hey, like if they don't know you, they're like, oh, what? So we're like, what are you? Like when people ask like, what are you? Like what box do you fit in? Like you a bodybuilder, you a powerlifter? And that question kind of, it doesn't annoy me these days, but I think, well, hang on. Like I said, if you look, I just like to move. Like right now, I like strength training, but I also like riding my bike. I also like surfing. I also like playing the piano. I also like, rock climbing, all these other things. So what do you think when people think of Olympic lifting, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions, or how do you describe to someone who doesn't know you, like what you do? Do you have a different way of putting it across?
Yeah, well, I think growing up as a kid, when especially in those early 4 or 5 years of my career as an Olympic weightlifter, I'd be like, I'm an Olympic weightlifter. And the first thing that people would turn around and go to is, oh, cool. So how much do you bench, bro? You're like, it's not really bench press. You take the bar and you put it over your head. What do you mean, like strict press? No, not really. It's kind of a little bit quicker. So early days, there was a lot of explaining as to the way in which Olympic weightlifting is done. And I think it's taken years for people to really have a good understanding, or enough understanding that you could even walk into a Globo gym now and there might be a platform and free weights. So I guess Olympic weightlifting was the pioneer of free weights, if you like, really, in terms of it being an Olympic sport. So I'd say for me, when I'm explaining to people about the sport, I'd probably say it's the most dynamic and technical movement you can do in a gym with weight. I guess is the best way to explain it.
It certainly is technical. I remember the first time I seen someone Ollie lifting or Olympic lifting, and I was like, "What is this? This is like a bloody squat on." Yeah. And I think as well with it. Like, so, for example, I think about deadlifting, right? And I'm like, right. And I know you recently just put 200 above your head, and congrats, because that's fucking unreal. So I'm like, right, deadlift 200. I'm like, and then I just think for a second, I'm like, imagine putting this above my head, even getting it off the rack and squatting it. And then I'm like, okay. And that's when I think you can truly start to see like the athleticism that's required to be able to do something like that. Which is why I think it's a sport
that a lot of people, when they go into the gym and they see people doing Olympic weightlifting, it's generally the one that's avoided the most because of the technical demand of it. I mean, if it wasn't for CrossFit, weightlifting wouldn't be as well known as it is today, and the people that are good at weightlifting wouldn't be as well recognized as they are. So, I mean, you have to pay dues really to CrossFit and the exposure that it has given the sport, because I think a lot more people now are coming around to the idea of, first of all, trying Olympic weightlifting or getting introduced to it in different ways. You know, the Olympic movements are starting to have a little comeback in functional training for a lot of people now. And I do feel as though a massive part of that is because people are learning how to teach the sport better, and people are actually understanding that it is a sport that is for everyone if done in the correct way.
No, for sure. And like you said, it is due to a lot of the popularity of CrossFit, which is get a lot of stick as well. But again, it's always contextual. Then I think an appropriate question is, what do you think people can take from Olympic lifting and apply to everyday life or even other athletic endeavors? Like, what are some of the main crossovers and correlations?
I think one of the biggest things for me growing up with the sport of Olympic weightlifting was the discipline it gave me. Unlike a lot of sports, like, you know, for example, football or rugby, where there's money, there's fame, there's stardom, and all of these external drivers for a reason as a young kid to do a sport are there, you do not have in Olympic weightlifting. So I think in a way to be involved in the sport of Olympic weightlifting, full stop, you have to have a very sadistic determination in order to want to participate in it. And the one thing that I love the most about Olympic weightlifting, and the reason why it's a great challenge is for everyone, is that you never win Olympic weightlifting and you never complete it. And it is very much a personal battle, and there is always one more kilo that you can put on the board or put on the bar, which is one of the things that I love about it. But not only that, it means that in the sport of Olympic weightlifting, you're competing against yourself essentially, so that no matter what standard you come into a room and you're at, so me clean and jerking 200 kilos, or you starting out and only being able to lift the 5 or 10 kilo bar, we can still train next to each other. We can still do the exact same movement. It's just you're varied dependent on the weight as to how good you are. And I love that. And it actually is a lot more inclusive than people, I think, people think.
Yeah, I think something as well, and I don't know if this is true, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Sonny, but it would seem that there's more of a culture, there's more of a social sort of element to it where people are quite accepting. Like you said, we could train next to each other regardless of what you're lifting, and you can kind of have that little bit of chat, like you can do the lifts, like it's very easy.
I like that you can sit down between sets.
Well, it's like the powerlifters, mate. You just sort of like 10 minutes, boys, what's going on? Just chat a bit of shit, which I think is really good. Now, obviously, you know, lifting is going to be a bit of a reoccurring theme. It's going to pop up in the conversation. But as I have mentioned before, you know, I want to really get into, you know, not just who Sonny Webster is. Like, we know, what you've done and who you are, but like, why? And so tell me, why you do what you do right now, and perhaps explain what you do a little bit more in terms of, your academy, your seminars. I know you mentioned that before as well. You're really passionate about helping people. What's your driving factor, and perhaps even how it started, and if it is different, Sonny, what it is now that keeps you doing what you're doing. And, like we said off air before, you've been working a lot and you've been putting the hours in, you're trying to find some balance at the minute, getting a bit of time to yourself. So what's the thing that drives you?
Yeah, so I think you kind of touched on it briefly there before you asked me that question when you mentioned the culture. And, I've been involved in the sport of Olympic weightlifting, like I said, for 12 years now. And one of the things that I was told from a very young age, I would say within my first 2 or 3 Olympic weightlifting sessions, is that regardless of what you do in this sport, you must leave it in a better place than where you found it. And I think that's important in whatever we do, in terms of, having an understanding as the why, or the reasoning as to why you do something, for me, is to really be able to, like I said, leave the sport in a better place than I found it, and to leave a legacy. And for me, always having that deep down, I guess, feeling inside, as that being why I do what I do, will always continue to drive me. And I think for me, as an athlete, and any athlete will tell you that's competed at an elite level, or Olympic weightlifting, or at an Olympic level, it's an extremely selfish sport. And it's an extremely selfish place to be in if you really want to reach the highest level of sport. And I think from a very young age, I always had the dream to go to the Olympic Games. So in terms of my energy and my focus, it was always towards being able to compete in the highest level of sport. And I never thought it would be through weightlifting. God, I would have loved that I'd reached an Olympic level in sprinting, or, a sport that was much more recognized or well paid. But weightlifting was my vehicle to be able to achieve my dream of becoming an Olympian. And I think I was very fortunate, because I think a lot of people get into sport, get into jobs, get into work, and not really know why they're doing it. Whereas from that young age, I always knew my why was because I wanted to go to the Olympic Games. And having that meant that every bad day's training, every struggle, every upset, every disappointment was all worth it once I achieved that end goal. So like you said, I think it's really important to understand that why. And I think from an early age, that was my reasoning. And I think in 2016, after the Olympic Games, it kind of faded away and changed. My focus changed, because it then became, from focusing on myself and where I wanted to be, to helping others achieve their dreams too. And back in 2011, 12, I was very fortunate to meet my first sponsor. Now, during this period in my life, I had no money, no financial support. I was just about trying to work out whether I could continue to study whilst trying to be a full-time athlete and go to Olympic Games in a sport that had no funding. And I met one day this guy called Jeff Dovey, who, ended up becoming a lifelong friend of mine, and almost like a brother to me now. But he became my first sponsor. And I won't go into it in too much detail, because you'll hear a lot more about that in other podcasts that I've spoken on. But one of the best things that he said to me is, you can have all the money in the world, but if you've got no one to share it with, it means nothing. And not only that, but to help someone else achieve their dreams, or make someone else's dream a reality, it's priceless. There's no better feeling in the world. And Jeff made that a possibility for me, helped me achieve my dream of going to the Olympic Games. And I think for me, that really resonated with me now in what I do in that period of 2016, was instead of continuing to push towards achieving things for myself, I was actually taking a lot more away, or getting a lot more out of helping other people succeed. And that didn't mean like succeed on a level of, trying to get someone else to go to the Olympic Games. It was more from a point of view that helping other people get the buzz of hitting a new PB, being successful in, in their training, being successful in overcoming any obstacle, whether it be a problem or something in business. And began to take a lot away from actually helping other people succeed. And in 2016, that's when my focus really changed, and why, the academy was born, first of all, to help other people improve their Olympic weightlifting, but then also traveled to start doing seminars to help people, first of all, learn from my mistakes, but also be able to, I guess, in a very selfish way, be a part of other people's successes as well. And, it's a very nice feeling, I guess, deep down. And it's not something that we, I guess, as a society focus on enough now, but helping someone else succeed is equally as enjoyable, and brings me as much satisfaction and, I guess, fulfillment in life to be a part of someone else's success. And I guess now when you ask me what my why is, it's helping other people achieve and succeed in whatever they want to do,
Yeah, you've really struck a chord with me there. Selfishly, I share the same passion, which unfortunately I think for you, like you said, you discovered that initially at such a young age, in terms of that. Let me use a metaphor as a North Star, right? It's like, I wanted to go to the Olympics. I was going to do whatever it takes. I think a lot of people, they fuck around for a long time. It's normal. It's the whole like, oh, you're at school. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? I don't know. Like, am I meant to know? Like, and there's this fear that I feel like school puts in as like, sit in your row, do your thing, get a qualification, get married, buy a house, this. And there's this whole ideology, which I'm really quite against, because I didn't really follow that trend. And I thought, oh, if I leave school early and, do this, you're going to fail. But as you said, it's not always the case. Sometimes you've got to go off the beaten track, but to have something that early on, I think is quite powerful. And I'm glad you mentioned Jeff, because that was another question I was going to actually ask about, which will segue into inspirational people, mentors that you have in your life right now. But I just want to underscore a couple of other things there. And one in particular is the ability to serve and help others, and the happiness that can deliver, not just like you said for yourself selfishly, but more to give. Like, there is nothing like that feeling of when you help someone and it's a shift in their body language, their mindset. It's not just about the pictures, or it's not just about the weight on the bar. They evolve, right? It's not transform. Transform sort of suggests that you go back and forth, and I don't like that bullshit 12-week transformation shite. It's like, no, it should be a constant journey. Like, you should always be evolving, and it's not just physical, it's mental. So I think, like you said, to be able to give that to people, travel the world, have the academy, be involved in that, it gives you goose pimples. And people who do that for a living truly know the definition of what that feels. So I think that's quite admirable that you're able to do that,
Yeah, and I think, like you touched on there about there being a blueprint. And I would say, I've definitely done a lot of blueprint things in my life, albeit at a very young age. I feel like I've kind of followed that blueprint, and I will the same, like, have people that, will come to me for direction and, sort of help them decide what they want to do. But, there's no right time when that could happen. And like you said, I do feel like there's a lot of pressure on the society now, younger people, to have to know what they want to be doing early on. But at the same time, I don't think that is the case. And it could take you 30, 40, 50 years before really you work out what you're passionate about. And I think that's always got to be the driving factor. And for anyone that's listening to this, it's not, never chase the external outcomes. It's always got to be the internal driving forces. And for me, it's always passion that I think leads from the front, in terms of what you should be focusing your energy into and where you see your purpose on this planet. Because we are extremely insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but if each and every one of us can make a very small impact in whatever way it may be, in whatever you can find passion in, it's important. And I think when we look to the people that we would see as successful, or the people who, I don't know, we're inspired by, they will too, just like someone that can seek happiness in the various simplest of things, have something that they're passionate about.
Yeah, no, this is true. And like you rightly said, purpose was a key word for me there. You know, people go, what's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? It is to have purpose, whether that's getting up because you've got a kid, you know, you got a son or a daughter, your family you got to provide for, whether that's, you know, you're looking after your parents, whether that's you just need to get some money to pay for the food on the table, or whether hopefully at some point it's something else. It's something that you're truly passionate about, you know, usually via
Yeah,
education.
yeah, and I think like you said there, there's so many levels to that, and there's not one that's better than the other in terms of the feeling of purpose is constant in you, in me, in to everyone that's listening to us chat now. Everyone, you know, it's all equal. There's no one's purpose is higher than another's in terms of what you feel internally. Although I'm sure the pressure of some roles is different, the actual internal feeling of feeling purpose in what you do actually remains the same regardless. And I think to always remember that, and instead of comparing, because I think that's something that social media brings us to do a lot, is to compare, you know, someone's self-worth or their purpose against someone else's, but it actually remains the same. And, you know, regardless of, like I said, what you do for work or what you find you're passionate about, is no different from I'm passionate about fucking lifting barbells and eating burgers, you know?
This is true. This is true. It's similar with money. People think, you know, oh, you know, if I had a car like that, or, you know, a girlfriend like that, it's like, no. Everyone's got problems. We just want better problems. But ultimately, if you were in that position, you'd realize that the grass is always somewhat what we think greener. So let me ask you this then, because it's interesting, right? So I was having a ponder the other day. And like you said, you know, people often ask, you know, what should I do? Or, you know, like, what's a thing I should get onto in life? So I was trying to think about what I listened to. It was actually a Tim Ferriss podcast, and a penny dropped for me. And it wasn't like the defining moment. There's no magic pill or anything. But it was one of his guests. I can't even tell you who it was, right? And this person just said to me, he said, in life, you know, find something that, and I've said this many times, so I'll be quick, find something you're good at, find something you're passionate about, combine the two. It's a dangerous combination, because you need to be good at it to actually get paid for it, and you need to be passionate to sustain it. And I was like, right. And that made sense to me. But I thought the other day, if someone was going to ask me, or I was going to ask a question to my younger self to find my why or my purpose sooner, if I could, but sometimes, again, it's the journey that you need to go through. And I argue that that's probably why I'm where I'm at today, because I've gone through those other things, and perhaps that's valuable. Yeah, I sort of thought, and give me your perspective on this, Sonny. I thought, okay, imagine you've got everything you ever want right now, like fully 100%. You've got all the material things you want. You've got all the physical, you've got all the mental, the relationship, you got the girl, you got the cars, if that's what you're into, the lifestyle, the money, everything, right? Now you've got it, you've had it. You've gone on your holidays, you've bought, whatever you bought. Now, what is the one thing that you would continue to do on a daily? And for me, like you, I love lifting heavy shit and putting it down again. I love it. I love getting the pump. I'm a bro. I love lifting. I love the camaraderie. I love the way it makes me feel. I love the way it makes me look. I love it. Everything about it. The culture, you name it. So I thought, well, I'm on the right track, aren't I? But I had to go sort of full circle and chase fucking rainbows for years, sell cars, work in hotels, cafes, all this, to kind of come back to that, to figure it out. So my question to people now is, put yourself in that hypothetical scenario, and perhaps, I'm not saying it will work, and maybe for the listeners, give it a go, and think about like what you'd still do. Like, you know, who the people you're going to still hang around with, where are the places you're going to be, and what are the things you're going to do. So I don't know how you feel about that, man, but
yeah, I think this is such a good topic to unpack, because it's definitely something that a question I've been asking myself a lot lately, you know, and I think always having these every 6 months, every 3 months check-ins with yourself, really, to understand what's actually important to you. And that's essentially what you're getting at there. What are the important things that will stay a continuum regardless of if everything else changed? And do you know what? I think one of the things that I noticed the most in terms of what changed for me, as for example, more success, more money, you start to achieve those things you've always dreamed of or wanted. And I think for me, I always expected to feel a different way when I got those things, or I achieved those things, or I started to do the things that I always dreamt of doing. But in actual reality, I never felt any different. And if anything, it actually stopped me starting to feel any sort of sense of feeling or emotion towards success. Partly down to not actually celebrating, you know, my successes or the things that I was achieving that I wanted to do, but partly because I was losing actual sight of what was important, or the things that actually are the things that stimulate me or make me feel good. And it was kind of like a really good reality check that I need. And I think that this is an individual thing to everyone. You know, the things that you think you want and the things you think are going to bring you happiness versus the things that actually do are two very different things. And there's no right or wrong answer, because I think, like, you know, people get lost in the fact of why does he care so much about having a fucking nice car, or, you know, why would he spend so much money on a new house? Why does she want that dress that's so bloody expensive, you know? But everyone's got their, I guess, their juice, if you like. Everyone's got their trigger, the things that, you know, excite them, or they want to invest their money in, or places they want to go and do. Everyone will have that. But in terms of and that's a very individual thing, but the things that deep down, you know, bring us happiness is very similar between each and every one of us. And it actually comes back down to the very simple things that we have day in, day out, such as time, such as affection, such as, you know, human connection, the simplest things that we all share, that are actually the things that we long for the most, that aren't the sparkly things that we always think they are. And I've definitely had that realization, or I don't think it's ever something that you always out and out will master, but it's definitely something, a check-in that you have every 6 months or 3 months, especially when things are going bad or going good, to actually reality check what's important to me, what's bringing me happiness. And I think it works both ways, because you can be in a position where things are going really well and being your least happy, in the same way as when things are going really shit, you could be in a very dark place and not know how to come out of that. And I think, again, resorting always back to practicing gratitude of the simplest things, thinking about, you know, your time, your energy, the connection with the people you've got around you, is always a great way to kind of find your level again.
Yeah, like that calibration, etc., which is true. And I think that's one of the greatest ironies, isn't it? Sometimes that, as you said there and explained very well, it's not often what you think when you do achieve certain things. And it is important to celebrate the wins, no matter how big or small. You should always celebrate them, because the journey is always better than the destination. Because when you're there, you want to go, it's like, oh, we're always putting like happiness on the horizon. And it's like, well, hang on, like, how do we be fulfilled? Like, how do we be content right now? Like, I'll be happy when I get, it's like, no, you won't, like, because then you'll want something else.
No, you're right. Exactly. I'm sure everyone here that's listening is a determined person in some walk of life, you know, or would put that down as in their top 5 personality traits, and they'll feel very much the same. You know, you achieve your first $5,000 earned, you're going to want 10,000. You achieve, you know, buying your first car, you're going to want a better car. And there's, first of all, always a better car out there, and there's always someone with a better one than you. And if you know those two things, like you said, I do feel it's much easier to find contentment in what you've got. And it's something I'll hold my hands up. I'm guilty of myself, and something that I'm constantly working on.
Yeah, and it's true, and it's important to, as one of my guests said a couple of weeks back, live an examined life, which I think is what you're referring to with those check-ins, like having, like, you know, as Ali G would say, you know, check yourself before you wreck yourself, to my UK crew listening. Yeah, no, but Shaka. Oh, legendary. But it's those little things. And I think something to segue then, because it's quite appropriate, as you mentioned, that is, apart from what you've already just spoke about, do you have any like daily habits and routines, apart from like gratitude, that you keep within your day that's helped you stay grounded and have a little bit of structure and focus? Could be like morning, evening, I don't know, could be something a bit obscure.
Yeah, well, I go in and out of different things, and I think, the hardest thing when you start to put in practices into your life is actually staying consistent with them, because I think we're very much guilty of, okay, I need a big change, and you go from one end of the scale to the other and it's not something that's sustainable. So I guess simple things for me, and things that have changed a lot this year, because mate, I'm still learning every day, and I make mistakes like anyone else does. I think it's sometimes hard to see that from social media, because you only actually see people's sugarcoating. But I think one thing I'm very consistent with, simple things, is we go for a walk in the morning, get a little bit of sunlight. Me and my girlfriend Linda will get up. We just go for a walk, even if it's 5-10 minutes, just a little walk. For me, I always down a liter of water and try and wait at least an hour, 2 hours before I have my coffee. I let my brain wake up. I like to fill this out each day, which is my to-do list or my notepad, and it will just have very simple goals on it that I want to achieve. Maybe even one of those goals might be to do my morning walk, or to check in with a couple of my friends, or they could be very work related. But I try and write down as much as physically possible on this, so that I get that sense of achievement and that I'm ticking things off as I'm going through my days. Even if, like now, for example, I hadn't wrote down do podcasts with Alex, I'll write that down to tick it off, And there's something about doing that, especially when you're working towards a big goal. Where in my life, I've got 6 different businesses, or many different businesses I'm helping. I can sometimes be sat here all day and actually be like, what have I achieved today? Whereas by having that little notepad and little tick book, I find that really helpful. So that's something that's in my day very often. And then I'm quite good with my food as well. So we do our food shops on a Monday, and I try and stick to a fairly consistent diet. And then I have my big paper diary where every day I just write down things as I'm doing it. And I think for me, putting pen to paper is something that's helped me massively this year, in terms of actually making goals a reality, and actually giving me, I think for me, whenever I write it down, it's more likely to happen, or it's ingrained more. So I guess there's simple things that daily for me that are in my routine that are helpful. And it's like you said, there's no magic pill. It's actually just performing the simplest of tasks that we know the answers to consistently. It's all about being consistent.
And that is a conversation I've been having a lot lately, in terms of consistency. And I sort of was talking to a few people recent, because of perhaps certain successes that have happened lately, or the way I'm performing and looking. And I'm like, look, no, I'm not taking anything. There's nothing magic that I'm doing. There's no magic pill. And if I was, I'd share the magic pill with everyone. But it is just consistency. And I think over time, that is a build up. And, it's like, say you got your academy, your seminars, or where you're at now, even perhaps when you're at the Olympics, people go, oh, it's all right. Or this, where's this person come from? Or like they just got there and it was a bit of luck. And it's like, well, you didn't see all the days and the hours and the fuck ups and the mistakes and all of this. And I think anyone who is truly successful in every sense of the word knows that it is a time, and it's just doing these like unglorious things. Like you said, that to-do list is so critical. And it doesn't matter how you do it, like whether it's on your phone, whether it's a notepad, whether it's 3 things, but if you just keep chipping away every day and you just make those little deposits, over time that adds up and it magnifies. And I think that because that's not like, it's not sexy, it's not marketable, it's not like, oh, do this and get $10,000 on the fucking YouTube ads. People don't think that it's the way to go, because it doesn't sound very glorious. It's the same as like lifting.
Going a notepad, buying a Bic and a notepad from Tesco, it doesn't sound sexy at all. But it's like you said, it's the simple things that like you said, done correctly will be most helpful. But in the same way, I think, like, you know, I've brought up some very basic things, but everyone that's listening will have things in their life that they'll do every single day. And I always liken this back to when I'm teaching someone to do weightlifting, and they'll have a pre-lift process, and they go, what's a pre-lift process? And I'll go, there'll be things that you currently do every single time before you lift without knowing it, that's part of your pre-lift process. It may be like wiggle your bum, or you might push your hair back behind your head, or pull your top down. And these little things are kind of, I guess, markers as to you're preparing yourself to perform. And the same thing will happen in people's lives now. There are things that they'll be currently doing that are part of their routine, or the things that we've just discussed then, that you're not currently aware of, but they're part of what you do that makes you great each day, or the things that makes you perform a certain way each day. So I think, like, sometimes it's not even just bringing in a new intervention. It's actually just acknowledging what it is that you currently do that's causing outcomes now. Whether that's eating McDonald's every day on a Friday morning and you feel shit every day on Friday afternoon, you wonder why, that's maybe the thing that would need a change. Or, you know, if on Tuesday and Wednesday you always lift best, and they're the days you wake up and you've done the washing up and you haven't got the kids, and you go, well, okay, that's something that's part of my process when I perform best. And it's just acknowledging the things that maybe be affecting you, good and bad, and then altering what you've already got before you actually try and bring in new interventions. Because I think, like, we're funneled all the time with, if you start drinking 2 liters each day in the morning, you're going to feel 10 times better. You know what I mean? There's always this new intervention rather than actually just working with what you've got. Yeah, it's sometimes better, actually realizing what you've got.
Sometimes it's not what you're not doing, it's what you're already doing, but that's fucking it up. And it's a good, it's a good example. I talk when, like, because nutrition's a big thing, right? And everyone's like, oh, you know, like, I eat pretty good, and I'm like, I'm sure you do, but you do eat good, but you overconsume, you know, because you're teaching people energy balance. Or it's like, well, you eat really good, but actually you eat too much of this or this. And so I think, again, it's like, comes down to that binary approach. It's not always more, sometimes it's less, which is obviously a popular saying. In terms of, you know, you touched base on Jeff before. Is there any people in your life, I know you've got a really good support network with your friends, based on listening to the podcast and what I've learned so far, but do you have any really key people? I know Lyndall's obviously very key as well. Do you have any other mentors or people that are key in your lifestyle at present, or perhaps even like through, I think you studied at Bath, if I've read correctly, you know, within your weightlifting or Olympic lifting career, or even like outside, I know any other, you know, interventions that you've done, any other sporting endeavors that, you know, you keep you grounded and really help you?
Yeah, I think there's the thing when it comes to key people or inspirational people for me, when everyone goes somebody who inspires you, it's never been the necessarily the feat of one person. It's kind of the personality traits of people that inspire me the most. I think one of the things that, you know, is individual to every single one of us are the people that, you know, the 5 people that you spend most of your time around, and you're very much a byproduct of those people. And yes, I probably do spend more time in my life with Lyndall than anyone else. And I think those people that are closest to you are the most, like, that deserve the most praise and pressure, because they deal with you when you're at your best and when you're at your worst. And I think that's always something to acknowledge as well. It's like the people that support you when you're doing shit, or when you're struggling, when you're upset, when you're down. And I think the people there, like, you know, it's like Lyndall, who deals with me on a daily basis in my emotional mood swings and vice versa, is a very fundamental part of my life. I don't go a day where I don't speak to Jeff. Every day I speak to him. I'd be a very different person without him. He, you know, he's got so much knowledge, so much experience that, you know, again, for me, it's being around people that have more experience than you, that can help you not make the same mistakes or can advise you with experience and knowledge is really important. Australian strength coach Bass, I spend 3 days a week with him, an extremely knowledgeable bloke, not only just in what he knows about training, in his philosophies as well. He's a father. He's been in a relationship for 20 years with one woman. I think that's commendable in itself. And there's he's very much a family man, and there's a lot of things that, just when I sit and listen to Bass, I take on board, and I love just listening to him talk. And I always leave the room after I've been in a room with Bass having something to think about or things that make me tick over. So he's very important. And then I've got a friend, Arcadius, who's actually in finance, and he's one person I've met in my life where everyone will meet certain people in their lives, but I just know whatever that guy ends up doing, what he's going to touch, he's going to turn to gold. He's got the gift of the gab, and it's just something about him that excites me as a friend. He's got a kind heart. He's very intelligent, and he sees the things that not everyone else would see. And it's a hard thing to describe, but I've got people that I've had around me in my life that just they see things through a different lens, and I think it's an extremely good talent to have. So he's very inspiring to me as a businessman, as a friend. And then I guess those people, just because I've been around them the most recently, have probably had the biggest impact. But I've also got a friend, a lady, Susie, who was my first ever PT client back in the UK, who I speak to regularly. She's just around 45-ish, I think. She's an extremely successful property developer, very proper, polite English lady. But again, for me, we have got completely different personality traits, but again, share a lot of similarities. And I think for me, always using her as a sounding board for her to keep me grounded and focused, and to think a little bit more old school mentality, and for me to her, keeping her young, excited, and thinking about taking more risks. So I've got a lot of brilliant people around me. I could talk for days around the people that I'm lucky to have around me. I mean, another massive thing that we've been diving into on my podcast as well, and we're going to talk about a lot more this week, is how our upbringing and we're shaped by our parents and our childhood. And I think, although I don't have the closest relationship now with my parents, it's something that I have, as I've got older, realized plays a huge impact into the way I am as a human and my personality, and I think it takes a while before you grow up to be able to realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can hear your passion in your voice when you talk about those people. And I mean, I think it's quite it's a beautiful thing when you can establish relationships with people, like you said. I think, like Susie, your clients, people that you can stay connected with, that keep you honest. And no matter how many years or the miles of the difference, you can continue that. Your friend, did you say Arcadian?
Arcadius.
Is he Greek? Because that's a wicked name.
No, he's Polish. I probably said it wrong.
Yeah, he won't be happy. Well, no, it sounds good. No, that one just it caught my eye. And I think for people listening as well, something that is critical. And I ask these questions for a reason. They're fun, but they display that, again. It's like you said before, Sonny. Who you hang around with the most will influence you. And I guess for a bit of a takeaway for people as well, something that really has helped me and has helped a lot of people, so I'm just going to pay this forward. And it's really cutthroat, but if you spend time with someone and you feel like, ask yourself after, you feel better or worse? And if it's always you feel worse, you cut down the time with that person and cut them out. And if you feel better, then you should increase that time. And it's very simple. And obviously it's not always fair because you might be in a bad mood, or just, you know, you might have had an argument with someone. But I think like something as a North Star is you do have to be very cautious, because time is, you know, one of the most elusive, you know, transactions we have on this planet. So you do have to be mindful as it's running out. Yeah,
I couldn't agree with you, but still, again, you know, it's only something that I've realized this year is, you know, it is so important, the people that you decide to invest your time in. And if they're not adding to you and making you grow as a person, like you said, reducing that might not be a bad idea.
I want to talk more about your academy and public speaking as well, and perhaps give us a bit of an insight as to what you were feeling when you first started doing your seminars, your speaking, and perhaps what some of the biggest lessons learned when you were getting live and you actually meeting people face to face that perhaps had followed you for a long time, and, you know, they were learning from you, and sort of talk us through what that was like to be able to get you know, meet the people and speak in front of them and do it in a live setting, because obviously, as you said, everything's so glazed, if you will, with filters these days in social media. And I think that, and I always talk about this, people say, you know, why do you still do the one-on-one, Alex? And I'm like, well, one, it helps me build my business still, but I love it. I'm a face-to-face guy, and I'll always try and do some way, shape or form of that. I don't think I ever want to lose it. I think it keeps the sword sharp, and it also keeps you relatable and personable, and that's how you really connect with your followers, with your friends, with your community. And you like you said, you create that culture, which is vital, I think, in ongoing success.
Yeah, I think for, like you said there, I think when you're doing face-to-face, for me, doing face-to-face seminars, although from a business point of view, it's not something that I rely on like it used to, I still get the most out of it in terms of how it fulfills me. And again, I think that's just, from me, as an understanding, it's knowing that, you know, doing that is just as important to make me feel good, keep me sharp, and make me a good coach when I'm working face-to-face with people. I think when it first started, God, I remember shitting myself trying to deliver my first seminar. I think, you know, I think you do with what everyone does, everyone that's even listening now, everyone knows, you know how to do your job. But I think sometimes when you're trying to explain it to someone else, it can be very daunting. And I think in those first few weeks or the first few seminars, I think one of the biggest things for me was actually saying everything that I said with confidence. And it made such a difference, because at the end of the day now, if I was to sit here and tell the guys that if you tuck your pinky finger, you know, round the back of your third finger when you're setting up to the bar, it's going to help improve your grip. A lot of people are going to go, oh, fuck, well, Sonny said this is going to be all right. And, you know, you say it with enough assertiveness, they'll be like, oh, yeah, okay. And they'll do it. So I think people genuinely will just trust whatever you say, because they believe in you. And I think it's always remembering that and being confident that what you're saying is good and it's worked, you know. And a lot of what I teach, I could bore you to death with the biomechanics of Olympic weightlifting, the technical aspects of the sport. But really, it's like, I don't feel the need now, as I've become a more successful coach, to overcomplicate things or to make things sound more technical than they need to be. And I really try and keep things simple, speaking a language in which people can understand and people can interpret, and give people real life situations that they can relate to. And I think that's really important now, as I've evolved as a coach and someone who teaches and public speaks. It's to always resonate, I guess, with my audience, and to always give each and every single person that comes and attends a seminar, because it is important to me that, you know, these people have been supporting me for years and are excited to see me, that every single person leaves a room that I've been in with something that's personal to them. Because it's easy to forget, I think, as your following grows, where it was once upon a time when you first started as an influencer or first started as a figure of authority, that it all started with one or two people. You know, even now it can be in excess of, you know, millions for some people. Each and every single one of those people is just as much inspired or motivated by you. And I think it's easy to take that for granted sometimes when you're reflecting, educating, inspiring, and speaking to your audience.
Yeah, no, I love that, mate. The keep it simple thing, because I think we see too much of either it's oversimplified and there's actually no actual structure or science or something. It's like, oh, well, I said, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's great. Thanks, mate. But at the same time, people try to make it more confusing because you will have to do it on this 45-degree angle to hit the tricep on the 25th. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, mate. Just do a push down, innit? You know, and sort of explaining, yeah, all right, let's use some basic terminology, whatever it is, and then using metaphors and examples. And people are like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's like a car. You start it up, you warm up, the body's similar. You can do this, do that, whatever. And I think a lot of
in a way that people can understand and people interpret it. It doesn't make you any less smart to use simpler terminologies. And at the end of the day, if you know you spoke to someone that did speak a more technical language, then you also have that opportunity to go into a little bit more detail with that individual. And I think it's always, you know, worth remembering that and to speak to your audience, not to the tone that you think.
I think that's good advice. And things I've also got to keep in mind as well myself a lot of the time, because I like to use language, and sometimes I've learned from other people I've looked up to that it's like, wow, you know what? I don't need to make it that technical because I'm speaking in riddles. It's like, yeah, you need to explain something, but again, make it relatable, make it easy to absorb, make it fun. You know, we've got to have that. In terms of gifts, are there any things that you gift resource-wise to people, to friends, or vice versa, gifts that you've received? It might even be links. It might be something that you've got around the house that you found really valuable or life-changing, or something that's been like, you know what, that was a game changer for me. It could be the notepad. It could be a timer. Yeah. I don't know. It could have been like some lifting straps or something. I don't know. Anything with sentimental value.
Yeah, I think when I think about the things that is most sentimental to me, I think as an athlete, when I was younger, I used to have a lot of things that I was sentimental with because it gave me security. And I think with anything that's sentimental, it makes you feel a certain type of way, which is why you've hung on to it for as long as you have, whether that be, you know, feel stronger when you've got that one, feel more confident when you're wearing that one, or whatever it may be. And I used to have a lucky pair of socks that I used to have whenever I used to lift. I think they were an old pair of my sister's socks, but I used to always have those particular pair when I lift. And one day I forgot them and I didn't perform well. And I started to then, and that wasn't the first time something like this had happened to me. And the same thing then happened on my Olympic trials. I prepared all my special outfit that I was going to be wearing to the Olympic trials, planned it out for days, and I forgot it on the day of the competition. Just completely, it's a completely another long story, but I rocked up to the most important day of my life, and I didn't have the things that were sentimental to me or the things that I thought as though I needed in order to perform. And it changed my thinking towards sentimental things, because I think if you put too much sentiment on a particular thing in order to either be the best version of yourself or in order to perform as best you can kind of set yourself up to failure for those things not being there. And I think in our lives, we'll have things that come and go, things that will disappear, things that we'll lose. And I think sometimes actually not holding too much sentiment in particular things is good, because I think else you become reliant on them. And I know that deep down, if you want to perform your best under any scenario, you have to be able to adapt to not having those things sentimental around you. But in terms of the things, I guess, that, you know, have been gifts that have been a game changer, like I think they're the things that I've held up already and showed you, the notepads, the simple things like that, that I do keep around me or can't leave the house without. I think for years as well, like from a personal point of view in business, I really struggled to invest in things that were going to help me grow as a business, because I think it's a very scary thing if you're starting out as an online PT or starting out as an influencer or starting a podcast, for example, to go away and spend 4 or 5 grand on the equipment you need to do it. But although it's something that in the long run is going to pay you back, it's a scary thing to begin with. And I think there's been lots of things, now as I've got older and more developed in business, that I've invested in myself and have been gifts to myself from a business point of view that, have been worthwhile investments in the long run.
Yeah. No, there's some good stuff in there, I think, to take away, especially like you said. I think we can all relate to a time where we'd prepared something. It might not be as a big event as you had on there, but and you forgot it and you were like, oh, fuck. I remember I used to motor race back in the day, and it's like forgetting your rib protector or something like that, or your fucking racing boots, and you're like, oh, and your dad would be like, what are you doing? You're like, oh, fuck. But then you realize it's like, well, I don't need. Yeah. And you it's a good skill that is forced upon you to learn and understand that, I as long as I've got my mind and obviously the basic equipment for whatever it is, like I can get this done. But it's almost like that whole, if someone trains in the AM versus the PM, I use this as like a simple analogy. Like people think, I can't train evening, I can't train in the morning. I'm like, you can, it's in your head and you can retrain your body. But sometimes you just have to tell yourself, like the mind is powerful. Which is interesting.
I was like that for years. And then I would only ever lift my heaviest weights at like 5-6 o'clock in the afternoon. You still there?
Yeah. Did it freeze?
Yeah, I don't lift the heaviest weights in 5-6 o'clock in the afternoon. And then basically I qualified for the World Championships, and we're out in Houston. And the opening list came out for the times in which people were competing. And basically what happens in weightlifting is like the A group, like the best group, like the top 5 that are going to potentially win medals, they lift last, and then like the worst people lift the earliest in the day. And I was in like the worst group for this competition, and the competition started at 7 o'clock in the morning. I ended up competing, doing my lifts and making it back in time to the hotel before fucking breakfast had finished. And the way in which I changed or prepared for that I would just every day in the lead up to the competition, the 7 hours before, I'd go to bed an hour earlier and wake up an hour earlier. So I think you do, in scenarios like that, have to train your body out of that mentality and that thinking. And, like you said, the brain is a powerful tool.
Yeah, you got to be able to just zone in and make it happen sometimes, because it doesn't matter how much you prepare, the carpet will always be pulled from underneath you at some point. And I always say to clients that, when people are like, oh, it's been a bad week or it's been this, and I'm like, it's all good. Like, it's not a bad week. It's just a challenging week. Like, there's always a shitstorm out there. Sometimes it's just raining shit. And, you get these things, bang, bang, bang. We're all going to go through them in life. Unfortunately, it's, if we lose someone in our family or whatever it might be, and they're going to be tough times. But if we focus on these basics and the things we can control, we can always have, it's like good, better, best. It's like good, better, or best week. It's like, yeah, you know what? This wasn't brilliant, but I still did something. I still got the dart on the board, which I think is important, which relates back to consistency, what we were saying before. What I want to ask now is, what are some things that you do partake in or like that no one would know about you or wouldn't suspect that you feel sharing?
Oh, things that I partake in. Well, everyone knows I like to send it and go out and have a drink. That's for sure. Love a let loose in that. Things that I do that people wouldn't necessarily know about me. I think I'm very open in terms of, what I expose myself to, and what I do and what I don't do. To be honest, I think, other than that, I don't keep any secrets with regards to that, to be honest.
Hmm. So you're not like someone like who loves to like secretly play like Scrabble or something like that, or play bingo on a Saturday night with the
No,
oldies.
no. Do you know what? Like, and I know like James has like his plays video games and he's like big into that. I don't have any of that. You know what I mean? I think like my release or my excitement, the things I love to do is my activity, my sport. You know, I love being outdoors, going for walks, and exercise. That's where I get my biggest adrenaline hit from is my exercising.
Mm.
So I think I'm big into that. I do obviously. I love my shopping, my clothes, and things like my materialistic things as well. I do have a big soft spot for that sort of thing. But again, it's a very personal thing. It's just fashion and things like that that excite me. It's the whole reason why I've got Big Friday Supplies, my clothing brand now, because that's an opportunity for me to again fuel another passion of mine in clothes.
Mm. No, that's fair enough. And I guess, like you said, if you are someone who's quite open about it, and you sort of you dot the i's and cross the t's with everything else, it's like you said, it's open out there with social media. And I do want to get
Yeah,
your.
so that's what I mean. You see everything. You see everything that's online. There's not many hours in my life where you don't see. You know that. To be honest, a lot of it though is sat right here. I am working, and do you know what? I'm excited by my work, so I am happy to sit here for 3 or 4 hours and smash out a load of work because it does excite me as well. So you know, it's sometimes I think a lot of people are stuck in jobs where they don't love or they're too scared to try something different. And it goes back to what we were saying about people finding what they're passionate about. You know, I truly believe you can make money or make a living and live a happy life out of the most weirdest, obscure things if you truly believe in yourself. And like I said, you let the passion drive you.
I
You
agree.
just got to be prepared to take the risk.
This is true. We live in a world where whether it's origami or making cheese, if you're passionate about it, you make money from it.
Be the best fucking cheesemaker there is.
Exactly. I love me some cheese on a burger. Now, I do want to ask this before we get into some like rapid fire hypothetical questions, and then sort of I have a key question that I ask all my guests. But before I do, Sonny, I think I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't ask this because it's so prevalent in what you do and current to what we're doing now in 2020, which is the social media. And I want to get your perspective and advice, not only from what you do, but also perhaps for the listeners in terms of like, how do you handle and manage that in terms of, do you have any rules where you're like, I don't have my notifications on, I'll just get on there a couple of times a day? Or are you just a bit of a free for all? How do you manage that? And perhaps because you do have, a large following and you're getting a lot of comments, like, are you going through all them yourself? Like, do the negative comments get to you? How do you handle all that?
Yeah, man, it is really difficult. And you know what? I think if I knew the answer to this question, it'd be the $1 million question. Because I think it's something that everyone's starting to acknowledge and realize now, but no one really knows what the answer is. I think for me, like I always remember, and it's sad, but this is true in a sense as well, that social media is work, it's my business, and everything that I do there is to create a certain emotion, is to create a certain reaction, and like I always remind myself that that's what social media is to me. It's a tool, in a sense, to push and promote my business and promote myself. I don't think really, although social media, in my opinion, was originally created to help people connect with other people and create community, I don't think it is that now. I think it's a very toxic tool in order to promote, sell product, and grow business. So I think the first thing for me there is reminding myself of that. I've seen firsthand the way that negative comments can affect people, grind on people, and we're so influenced now. If you've seen the new documentary on Netflix, we're so influenced now by social media and how people react to us that don't even know us. It's scary. If you post something and you see it gets 1,000 likes, for example, you're like, fuck, and you feel good about yourself because you've had that gratification, or that, you know, people acknowledging you. And I think it's always important to remember that we shouldn't look to social media for that gratification or for self-worth, because it is very manipulated by the people who run social media, you know. So I think, again, as a second point, that's really important to not, for me as well, not look to it for that. Very often I know exactly what content is going to go really well, what content isn't going to go really well, what content's going to make me lots of money, what content isn't going to make me much money. So for me, it's like, I'm not driving particular content. If I post me doing silly barbell skills each and every day, I will get shitloads of interaction and a load of comments. I know that that's a result of that. If I post something that's quite educational and has a call to action to engage in one of my products, I know that I'm going to help educate people, which is going to bring me a good sense of feeling, but then it's also going to run towards me making more money or growing my business. So I think that I'll always acknowledge that whenever I'm posting something, as a third thing. In terms of how I manage my time on it, I'm not good at that. I'll hold my hands up. I think, you know, me and Lyndall's an influencer as well. She's a model. She's very on social media a lot. So we're in our household, it's kind of like we have to set boundaries with it because it does consume our lives, you know. I think for me, connecting with people via email, people being on my email list is important because I can reach them and speak to them on a deeper level than what I do with people on my Instagram story or through watching a post. So I think having that's important. I think we try our best to leave our phones in the first part of the day, and I think that's something for everyone. If you can just do your first 15 minutes of the day without your phone, you'll be really surprised the impact that can have on the rest of your day. If you wake up to a notification from, you know, someone that said something negative, or you know, some bad news, it can really affect the rest of your day. And I don't think your brain's awake and alive enough yet at that point to deal with it. So what's really important for me is the first thing I do is I go either leave my phone, put my phone outside the bedroom when I go to bed, or if it is in my bedroom, don't look at it until I've had at least had my shower and my water before I come back to it. I think, you know, it's those things, simple things that can be helpful. But again, like, I'd be lying to you if I said that I've got those things on lockdown, because I don't. And I'm very aware of how social media consumes me in what I do in my business and in my job. And like I said, this is all part for me over the next, this week especially. It's finding that balance and that understanding better.
No, I appreciate your honesty as well, mate. It's good. And I mean, it's always good to keep it real. And I think, as you said, it is a big question now, and it's hard to really know. I don't think there is personally, I don't think there's a specific answer to that. I think to null it down, and again, perhaps for the listeners, it's, do you control it or does it control you? And I think if you control it, it's fine. But when it gets out of hand, which once again, I've been there, you know, I've been spending too much time on it in the past, and I've found things that work for me, but that's not going to work for everybody else. So like you said, understanding it, I think, is a key thing there. Like you said, you know,
being efficient as well with your time on it. You know, if there's certain things, if I'm going on to post something, then get on there, do like I said, I'll have my 4 boxes of my social media posts that I do each day. Get on, do them, and then get off, and not get stuck in a fucking vortex of flicking through just meaningless shit. But yeah, turning notifications off is good, because it's not something like, we've been sat here for a minute and my WhatsApp's just as bad as my emails and everything. This is just in our conversation, you know. So like, the amount of notifications that will come up even from important stuff on my phone is silly in the space of an hour. But I think keeping that down is important as well, to not having things that don't matter too much popping up on your phone. So then again, like you said, you're in control of when you go on your email, or it's not Instagram that decides when you've got a notification. Because if anyone that's listening hasn't gone and watched that documentary yet on Netflix, the apps are designed to get us to spend as much time on there as possible.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm a big believer. I'm reading a book at the minute from Joe Dispenza, Evolve Your Brain, and it was talking about how, like, you know, we have these anchors, you know, the fight and flight, and like every time that thing pings, like, even like I say to some clients of mine who are like coaches as well, and they're like, you know, how do you manage your time with this? And I'm like, well, this is just what I've found. But I'm like, if you just turn all your notifications off by your texts and your calls, because I'm like, back in the day when I used to go on my mum's mobile, I played Snake on it, and that was it, and it was for calls. But now, you remember those days? Yeah, that was it. It was Snake or nothing. And now it's everything, and it pings, and even if you're not going to check it, you're on edge because you're like, I need to.
Yeah, I need it.
Or you start like reading the message, and it's like, fuck, and it's on your mind.
Do you know what? It's so nice, you know, especially some mornings when Linda and I do our walk, we do leave it at home, and it takes a little while, like you said, to get over that anxiety that people don't actually need you, or it's not important you have your phone. You can actually connect far better with the person that you're with as well, and get into a much, you know, deeper level of conversational connection with the people you're around when the phone isn't there. But like I said, it's something that I'm playing around with and learning as well. So don't be ashamed if anyone's listening and you've got all those things wrong that I've just highlighted there, because I do them as well. And I'm learning with you, but it's just making those small changes, just, you know, and then do the best you can from there.
Yeah, man, 100%. It's almost like you need to go back to go forwards, and people like listening in our generation will know that. I don't know about you, but when I was in the UK, I always found my mates. I didn't have a phone. I always got home on time, right? And now I'm like, how would I meet up with my mate if I didn't, like, but we would. Because we'd be at the gym or something. Something would happen.
You work it out, you know.
You do. I want to move on to quickly some more rapid fire hypothetical questions for my last one, Sonny, because you've been very generous with your time, and I appreciate that. Which is, and these are just a bit of fun. I know you like this, so this will be good. I'll ask some that I think are going to be more bespoke to you. And the first one is, because I know you love food like me, and I think I know what the answer is, but we'll ask it anyway. Favorite food, if you had one last meal or one meal that you had to eat for a whole week, what would it be? It can be entree, you can have main, drink, whatever. There's no rules, mate. Go for it.
Yeah, so it'd be a burger, but the burger, right, has to be buttermilk fried chicken.
Here we go.
And beef, bacon, cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, and raw onion. That's my perfect combination. So 2 beef, 2 chicken patties. So it's a big burger. Yeah. And then I've got a little fetish for having a steak, and then these pizzas that we get, the frozen one, Dr. Onkron or whatever they are, spinach, one of them, but a steak and a pizza at the same time, and eat the steak with knife and fork, and the pizza is just a lovely, lovely little combination there. Third favorite food would be Indian, tikka masala or butter chicken with garlic and cheese naan. They're like they're my 3 weaknesses, but I've got a terrible sweet tooth as well for chocolate.
Mate, that is probably...
Mate, you're trying to get me a fucking physique, mate.
Flexible dieting 101. Don't worry about it. I think, mate, that is probably the quickest response that I've had, and the most specific, mate. I love that. That was just like bang, 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 bang. I love that, mate. Out of interest, where do you get that burger from? Because that must be a big fucking burger.
I make it when I go in. You go into any good burger shop that sells burgers, you just tell them how you want it, and they just look at you like, what? And you just do it.
And they're in the back going, we should try this shit. You're like, you can thank me later, mate. Bet it comes out like that.
Yeah, for the gram.
For the gram. Hashtag. For the kids. All right. The next one is, because obviously the elephant in the room, COVID, if you could travel to anywhere in the world right now, or tomorrow with Lyndall, you know, whoever's important to you, you take your friends as well. where would you wake up, and why would it be? Would it be back in the UK? It could be where you are now. Would it be somewhere different?
We speak about it daily. I just want to be in Bali on a moped, just cruising around in a Beta and my sliders and training in Wanderlust. You know, we speak about it all the time. It's the first place we want to go as soon as we can travel again. I think for Australians and people who live in Australia, oh fuck me, Bali. Everyone goes to Bali, like whatever. Like it's the nearest place they can go on holiday. But like I said, I've traveled so much of the world, but it's just that nothing makes you feel more free than pinging around Bali on a moped and, you know, having a bintang for $1 or whatever it is. And, you know, I just love it.
Right. Simple pleasures.
Yeah.
Simple pleasures. All right. My next one for you is, if you could choose any superpower and you can make it up, what would it be and why?
Oh, I would probably increase time, you know, like I think I'd definitely add a few more hours into each and every day. I wouldn't want it to relive any moments, because I think, like we've touched on previously, I think like every bad moment or experience we've been through is a lesson, and you know that's one of my favorite quotes: "The biggest lesson we learn when we lose." You know, so it wouldn't be to go back in time; it would just probably be to make more of it, and you know. That would probably be it, to be honest. Increase that.
That's pretty cool. That's a new one. I've not had that one yet. I'll add that to
my list. Not sleep. I love sleep, but I wished it was something that we didn't need, or something that we didn't long for to operate, because that would be so helpful.
Well, if you think about it, what was that now? You spend a third of your life sleeping. So then you'd have a whole nother third to your life. So that would almost grant your first superpower to increase time. So that would be a good one as well.
Yeah, win-win.
Now, my last question, spoiler alert, it's not a space fact. Don't have to worry about that. But
I'll make you off a fucking good one.
I'll let you save that for Monday. But it is a bit more serious, but it can be fun as well. And it is, I ask all my guests, and it's, can you identify a fear in your life that you've had? It can be big, can be small, could be something you did the other day, could be years ago. What the fear was, how you overcame it, and what it's taught you about life. And I have a sneaking suspicion it might be related to that quote that I know is your favorite quote that you just said before, but could be wrong.
Yeah, of course. I think it's definitely becomes a massive part of it in my failures that I've had. I think one of the biggest fears that I have is, I guess, not feeling my own, like, feeling worth in what I do, you know, and finding that, I guess, being content. That's something that I fear probably daily, finding contentment in what I'm doing and who I am, which is a daily battle for me, because I don't really know what the right answer is to that. So it's not something that I'd say I've overcome. It's something that I work on, especially as, like I said, I do some fucking cool shit and have achieved some amazing things. But, you know, a lot of people sat in my position might think, well, you know, you must be happy, but I'm always still longing for more. So I think that fear of never finding contentment's my biggest deep down fear. But I guess, like I said, with some of the things that we've already spoken about today that help towards that, is to really try to tick boxes, acknowledge what you do and achieve each day, practice gratitude of what you've got each and every day. And I think they're the things that will eventually lead me to finding contentment in what's actually right in front of me, and, you know, what's to come.
Mate, no, respect. And you know what, I think that's a really appropriate way to finish off what's been a really well-rounded and an enjoyable conversation with lots of little nuggets, Sonny. Before we sign out, your academy, your links, mate, give us the plugs. Where can people find more about you? And also, maybe what's your plans for the future? Obviously, with everything going on right now, like, where are you taking it? Are you going to expand the academy? Have you got some seminars that are going to come up? Obviously, you got Big Friday supplies, etc.
Yeah.
Anything new?
So I've got, I guess, where do we start? So the Sonny Webster Academy, that is where I do all things weightlifting. I teach people how to get into the sport. I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen today that have been like, what the hell is Olympic weightlifting? But I'd be keen to give it a go. You go to the sonnywebsteracademy.com. You can get a free trial there. You can also check out all my different training programs. I've got programs for mobility. I've got programs for improving your squat. I've got programs for improving your Olympic weightlifting if you already do it. That is my coaching education there. My clothing line that just come out is Big Friday Supplies. We've already sold out of our first drop, but we are doing another drop in the near future. It's going to be the first hype brand to sportswear, to gym wear, to weightlifting wear, I hope. And I'm putting a lot of my energy and creativity into that, and that's been very enjoyable. I then have, I guess, your email list is always a good place to find me. Jump on my email list. I'm always writing all sorts of random shit there, but it stays up to date. I've just launched my own barbell brand with Apex Day One. I've got my charity in Soweto. They've got a huge fundraiser that's starting tomorrow, which will probably be a little bit late for the listeners here, but definitely go and check out Lifting Dreams Soweto. I've partnered with, set up a charity out there to actually build gyms in Africa to give people an opportunity and something to focus on, which is extremely, again, fulfilling for me. We didn't even get onto that today, but go and check that out, Lifting Dreams Soweto. If there's anything that you can do to help support these kids, I'd be extremely grateful. And yeah, so that's kind of it from me, guys.
No, appreciate it, man. And I did have that question on my list, actually. I thought that was very cool, perhaps for a round two in the future, but I'll definitely put the links down because I think it's important. I think it's phenomenal to always give back, pay it forward, give something back. And again, appreciate your time, Sonny. Thanks for sharing. For everyone listening, go check that out. Sonny's a legend. He's got some really valuable insights. Obviously, he does a lot of great things for the community. He's giving back as well. Lots of cool things there with Big Friday Supplies, the charity, etc. And of course, the Academy, because the Academy is where it's at. I think for education as well, for people to be able to sustain that is pretty awesome. Again, guys, thank you for listening. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, iTunes, Spotify. As long as you're not driving, guys, leave that rating and review. Really appreciate it. And of course, until next week, stay fearless.